I'm Greg Borowski, an editor here at the Journal-Sentinel. I'm joined by Dan Bice to talk about a story he has out now about Governor Scott Walker and his faith as it relates to the presidential campaign. Now, Dan, this is clearly a very personal topic. Why does this make a fodder for a news story, an investigative look at it by the Journal-Sentinel?
Yeah, I don't know if it's an investigative look. It's more just a review of where he is, and the reason it's a story for a couple of reasons. One, it's something that's becoming more and more of a story as he talks to groups. He's mentioning his faith, bringing it up. He's bringing it up more on the presidential campaign trail than he did when he was governor. And I think part of that is people in Wisconsin are a little less comfortable with this. But if you're speaking to evangelicals in Iowa, it's important for him to bring that up. So that's one reason. And then two, it's been an issue with some of the other candidates, and it's been an issue in the past with presidential candidates, and in particular with President Obama. You had the controversy over Jeremiah Wright and his comments from the pulpit. So we just decided to take a look at this. And, you know, in terms of understanding who Scott Walker is, there are two key things. One's his politics, and then two is his faith. And as he runs for president, these two things are becoming more and more prominent.
Why do you think folks in Wisconsin might not be as comfortable with that as in Iowa or South Carolina or some of the places where he's making it more front and center on his on the stump?
You know, Wisconsin's a very heavily Catholic and Lutheran state, and I think that I grew up in an evangelical background. We talked about politics and faith all of the time. I now go to a Lutheran church, and I just don't see that as much. And I think it's that there's a little bit more, respect for the separation between church and state. Maybe not respect's the word, but there's just a stronger sense of that with Lutherans and Catholics. And with evangelicals, it's almost expected that you have to talk about your faith when you became born again and all of those things. And so we discuss each of those things in the story, when that happened, and we talk about how he's become more open about it, and then we've talked about his faith journey, because where he is today isn't where he's always been.
What are some of those changes or some of the nuggets you found as you were doing the reporting on this story that our readers will certainly find interesting, because he hasn't talked about it as much?
Well, there are certain occasions when he's talking to religious groups, he does talk about how he believes God has talked to him directly or through devotionals on major life events, whether it's choosing to marry Tanette or whether to drop out of the 2006 campaign for governor. He believes God communicated to him and told him that he should do these things. And we explained some of those things. But probably the biggest event in his life was he grew up in American Baptist, which there's a whole array of Baptists, and this would be the most main line of the Baptist churches. His father's an American Baptist preacher. And he was an American Baptist up until the year 2005. He was at a American Baptist church in Tosa, where it's not your typical evangelical church. It had a female pastor who was opposed to the Iraq War, who was opposed to same-sex marriage, to the same-sex marriage ban in Wisconsin. And shortly after he got involved in the race for governor in 2005, he switched from that church and went to Meadowbrook, which is a traditional evangelical, non-denominational church, much more conservative politically, much more conservative theologically. So we discussed, the governor didn't refuse to answer questions about that, but we just discussed when that happened and the possible reasons that he could have made that switch.
He did respond by email, if I remember right, to some of the questions.
He responded by email to, we had like 15 different questions for him. Originally he agreed to sit down and talk to us, but then backed away from that. So we submitted some questions, and he talked about, how often he prays, favorite Bible verses, those sorts of things. But when we asked specifics regarding his faith journey, he didn't want to talk about that.
Well, we've often talked about the governor, that he's a very political animal, and things he does have political overtones. Is there a danger here, though, to apply that lens to this, or are there things that he may just have done that people will interpret differently because of the campaign?
And we're very much, aware of that. He is a political animal, much more so than I or you probably are. He got married, as everybody knows, or as a lot of people know, on Ronald Reagan's birthday. He got engaged on the day that George Bush gave his nominating speech to the Republican convention. I don't know of anyone else who did that, but it's entirely possible. When you're making faith decisions, frequently those things are very personal, and we're not, calling into question any of those decisions. We're just saying this is what happened, and it's unfortunate that he hasn't talked about it. Maybe as a result of this story, he will.
All right, I will note I got married between the primary election and the gubernatorial election when Jim Doyle was running against Mark Green, because I had to sneak it in there because that was when the campaign was. So I'm more of a journalistic animal, I guess, than a political animal.
I guess
but,
so.
All right, but thanks for listening in, and we hope you enjoy Dan's story, which you wrote with Anissa Johnson.
Thanks.